Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the council, meeting for Wednesday, February 14th, which happens to be Valentine's Day, or as the younger people call it, Valentine's Day at 9:30. I call this meeting to order, and we'll start with the land acknowledgement. We are gathering on lands that have been home to First Nations people from time immemorial. We acknowledge that what we now call Richmond Hill is on the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and the Mississauga and Chippewa nations of the Williams Treaty. We also recognize that we are on part of the traditional territories of the Haudenosaunee and the Huron-Wendat. We would also like to acknowledge all First Nation, Inuit, and Métis people from across North America, also known as Turtle Island, who now reside in the city of Richmond Hill. We are committed to building constructive and cooperative relationships. So if you're able, I'd ask you to stand now for our national anthem. Okay, thank you very much. So the next item on the agenda is public forum. I don't believe we have anybody signed up for that. Next item is council announcements. Anybody have council announcements? Councillor Davidson.
Thank you. I just want to remind folks that this is Vision Month and the Oak Ridges Lions Club are collecting used and old glasses, and you can drop them off at Oak Ridges Library and many other locations. So please check out my website or Facebook and find those old glasses and donate them. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Councillor Silvitz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, everybody, and happy Valentine's Day to all. I just wanted to say a quick thank you again to our staff members who presided and presented at my Ward 5 Civic Engagement Committee meeting of last week regarding snow maintenance and snow removal protocols. I want to thank Councillor Tree for attending. It was greatly appreciated to have you there. It was very well attended. And specific thanks to Public Works Operations staff, senior staff, and bylaw and community standards senior staff. Thank you very much for everything you did to present to our residents and to answer some very important questions. It is and was greatly appreciated. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Tree.
Thank you, Ms. Chair. I do have two announcements. Tonight, we're going to holding a public meetings regarding to the Arnold Street renovation, and it's online meeting. So everybody interested in that area, please join, make a registration and join online. So this meeting will be start from I think 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Tomorrow, which is Thursday, we're going to have another public meeting for the traffic safeties. And the location will be in Algon Mills Community Center. So all the residents in the ward are welcome to join this traffic related public meeting. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else for announcements? Okay, seeing none. As I mentioned earlier, it's Valentine's Day today, and this is a day that we celebrate the people who we love. But I think this is a difficult day, as a couple of days ago, we learned that 3 people were killed in Richmond Hill in a case of domestic violence. And we now know that Ramilia and her 5-month-old baby girl, Morgan Rose, Uncian Massacot, were victims of that domestic violence incident. This is a heartbreaking thing for our community. I mean, it's heartbreaking in any situation, but particularly when it's a part of a domestic violence incident. And, you know, this council a little while ago passed a motion to declare gender-based violence and intimate partner violence in Ontario an epidemic. And this is exactly the kind of thing that we're talking about. So it is a sad day here in Richmond Hill. Our heart goes out to the families of those victims. And I know that, you know, we need to be able to offer the kind of the education and the support that is needed through organizations like Yellow Brick House and Sandgate, which is here in Richmond Hill, to support people when they've had that type of thing happen to them, but also, and I think this is really important, educate people on what domestic violence means, how to recognize it, and frankly, to educate boys and young men that this is completely unacceptable and it has to stop. So again, our heart goes out to those people. On a lighter note, well, slightly lighter note, I was able to represent Richmond Hill and York Region at the Auto Theft Summit in Ottawa on last week. I will say that it's been very well reported in the news, so I won't go into all the details, but I did leave from that summit thinking that there have been some good steps that are going to be taken and committed to by the federal government, provincial government. I hope also from the auto manufacturers. They seemed a little less willing to take on the heavy lifting that they need to make their products safe, but I am convinced that the federal government will be pursuing changes in that regard as well. It's going to take a lot of effort to solve that problem, not just in Richmond Hill, of course, but in other GTA communities, including efforts at the ports so that these stolen vehicles don't get out of the country. So the federal government has announced $28 million to tackle this, and $121 million to prevent gun and gang violence in Ontario, because we know that these thefts are being perpetrated by organized crime. So I was glad to hear that. I think that's a positive step forward, and we'll just be waiting here in Richmond Hill and other GTA communities for a positive result. And finally, I just wanted to mention that on February 29th, I will be leading a team from York Region with York Region mayors and councillors to be homeless for the night for the 360 Kids experience. So I would encourage anybody on council here that would like to join the team. I would be happy to have that happen. And any members of council, any members of the public that would like to help and support 360 Kids through that event, again, that would be very welcome. So anyway, thank you very much for all that. And seeing no other council announcements, we'll move on to introduction of emergency or time-sensitive matters. Okay, seeing none, I need a motion to adopt the agenda. Councillor Tree, Councillor Silovitz, all those in favor? Opposed, that carries unanimously. Okay, disclosures of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Okay, adoption of previous council minutes. We have a council meeting that was held on January the 24th. Motion to adopt those minutes. Councillor Davidson, Regional Local Councillor Deputy Mayor Chan, all those in favor? Opposed, that's carried. Items requiring separate discussion. So we have an agenda before us with a number of items, all of which could be passed on consent, I believe. Okay. No takers for that. All right, so yeah, they can all be, because they're all part of committee of the whole. Okay, seeing none. So a motion to adopt everything on consent then, I guess, right? We can do that, right? Okay, the whole shebang. Councillor DePaula, you were interested in doing the shebang last week, so we'll give you that motion.
Sure.
All right. And Councillor Silovitz, all those in favor for the shebang? All right, thank you very much. All right, so we're lucky today to have a couple of exciting things happening here. The first one is a presentation by our city manager, Darlene Joslin, to Tarana Rahimi, Manager of Corporate and Donor Relations for the United Way of Greater Toronto, on behalf of the City of Richmond Hill's 2023 very awesome United Way campaign. So, City Manager.
Good morning, members of council, Mr. Mayor. I'm honored to be here today as your chair of the 2023 United Way campaign. 2023 was the first year in a very long time that we were able to gather in person and raise money for such an important cause and for such an important component of our community. Staff participated in the events like this, and members of council I'm going to do a shout out to Councillor Liu, who did our CN Tower climb. There was a hockey game, barbecue, our first office staff mini Olympics. So we continued virtual initiatives like our payroll pledge drive, silent auction, and we added our bingo this year. And I don't know, I was always one or two numbers off, but I was close. It was the most exciting part of my day. Whether it was by pledging your support through a payroll donation, participating in one of our many fundraising initiatives, or by contributing as a member of the fundraising committee, I'm very proud of the support that our staff here at the city have shown. And because of it, we're making a real difference together in our beautiful community of Richmond Hill. When I think of United Way, I think of empowerment, because that's what this organization has done for so many residents in Richmond Hill. Several local and regional support agencies will directly benefit from the funds that were raised through Richmond Hill's 2023 campaign, including the Craftsman Center, which provides support and resources for people with lived experience of mental health, substance abuse, and housing challenges. Home on the Hill Supportive Housing, which serves adults with serious mental illness and their families. CHATS, which stands for Community and Home Assistance to Seniors. They provide home and community services to older adults and caregivers living in York Region. The Yellow Brick House, which provides help and hope to women and children. And 360 Kids, which provides assistance for at-risk and homeless youth. I'd like to welcome Tarana Rahimi, Manager of Corporate Donations for the United Way Greater Toronto, to join me to accept our donation. And I'd also like to acknowledge our fundraising United Way committee members and ask them to also join us at the podium for a photo. Leanna Colucci, Yazir Barigagi, Brian Burbidge, Annie Fung, Susan Collins, Gemma Pitcher, Anguilina Bodrova, Nicole Conboy, Cheryl Neeson, and Jen Coburn, Paul Collins, and Mary Wong. So you can see that I had a really robust committee that kept me on my toes. And I had to go back to my recreation days to be sharp for them every week as we met to go through the campaign. I'm really proud, not just of the work that they did and the activities that they planned, but the enthusiasm and the freshness that they brought to that committee is the reason why we were so successful this year. They were outstanding. So it was my pleasure to work with each and every one of them. Without their hard work and dedication, these types of events and activities at the city would not be successful. So I'm thrilled to be able to present a check to the United Way on behalf of the city of Richmond Hill. And with our efforts this past year, we surpassed our fundraising goal by more than $7,500, and we are able to donate a check today to United Way for $32,508.95. Thank you. So I would ask at this time that the mayor come to the podium and the committee members come up to the podium as we present this check. to Rani. Front and center. Happy to present the big check for over $32,000. That is for you. And we'll do this first. Are you waving or are you doing something else? And committee, come in. So we'll kind of move this way a little bit?
Yeah,
a little on each side. Squeeze in. The tall ones always go back.
Can we just straighten out the check maybe?
Yeah.
Brilliant. 2, 3. Thank you.
All right, that's great, guys. Thank you so much.
I'll now invite Trana to the podium to say a few words to council.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to be here with you this morning as we mark an end to a very successful campaign. I'm very fortunate to work with York Region Municipality, particularly the city of Richmond Hill, the city I call home. It's beautiful to witness the growth and evolution of a city like Richmond Hill, especially when that growth fosters a sense of community and safety among its residents. When neighbors, families, and friends feel connected, it creates a strong social fabric that enhances the overall well-being of the community. This sense of connection often leads to greater support networks, increased trust, and a shared responsibility for the city's prosperity. It takes all of us working together to create real change across our region. And we have the great pleasure of working with an extraordinary community agencies across Richmond Hill. From crisis to critical social infrastructure, from blunting the pandemic to building blocks for a better tomorrow, we are united in making life more livable for people across York Region, Toronto, and Peel. Today, I'm here to thank you for your tremendous efforts, time, and generous donations. With your generous donations, United Way connected 2 million people to the essential services they needed. It allowed us to support 63,000 people in our community to gain the tools to better manage their mental health. And lastly, allowed us to help over 16,000 community members access healthy and culturally appropriate foods. One of the key strategies United Way is working on is building strong and healthy communities, creating vibrant neighborhoods where everyone can experience a sense of belonging and connection to one another. Thanks to your generous donations, we can invest in making your local community here in Richmond Hill more engaged, connected, and safe for all. I want to express sincere thanks to each and every one of you for contributing to the immense success of this campaign. While our efforts continue, we are grateful for strong partners like the City of Richmond Hill who support, strengthen our mission, and enables us to achieve even more. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tarana. And you've outlined that very well. I just would add a couple of quick things. First of all, I mean, I think when we think about, community wellness and the good work that gets done, United Way has such a very good brand and trusted brand throughout our communities, and the work that you support and we really appreciate is the work that is done by so many of these not-for-profits that really do a great job in supporting our community in so many different ways. So, I mean, United Way is a bit of a blanket over all of that, which we appreciate. But I'd also just like to emphasize the shout out to our employees who very generously gave that money. And I think that, when I think about the people that work here in the city of Richmond Hill, they're dedicated public servants, and for them to also step up and realize the need in our community and give generously, I think is a real testament to the quality of people that we have in our organization. So I want to thank them as well, and thank you for the great work that you do. So thank you very much. Okay, moving on here then, we have a presentation today, and I'm really pleased to have this happen today. Kevin Powell is here, who's the General Manager of Social Services Branch for the Regional Municipality of York. And this is a presentation that I asked to have happen here at our council. We are all dealing right now across the GTA with a really significant crisis with homelessness. And from a suburban context, we're certainly not used to seeing homeless people on the street and seeing encampments in our parks, but we are certainly seeing that in the last number of years. And there's many reasons for that. The solutions I don't think are likely going to be very simple, but the region of York is the point person in our area for helping to manage that and come up with the solutions that we have the power and jurisdiction and funding, frankly, to be able to provide that would, hopefully make that problem significantly better than it is. And I think it's important that we all have an opportunity to learn what the region is doing and also ask questions if needed. So without further ado, Kevin, I'd ask you to come on to the podium here and make your presentation, and thank you very much for being here.
Just adjust this. Good morning. Thank you, Mayor West. Okay. Well, good morning. Thank you, Mayor West. Good morning, Richmond Hill Council. Wanted to thank you very much for the opportunity to be here this morning and to share some information with you regarding homelessness in York Region, and to share information regarding homelessness right here in in Richmond Hill as well. And wanted to share, I'm joined by my colleague, Monica Sangoy. Monica is my manager in our Homelessness Community Programs Division, and she does tremendous work every day supporting those who are at risk of homelessness. So really appreciate the opportunity to be here. Next slide, please. So for today's presentation, I will set the context for homelessness in York Region, share an update on the homelessness service system plan that we are in development right now on, and then wrap up with a few discussion questions as well. And we also have a short video that we'd like to play. Next slide, please. The region is one of 47 service managers responsible for homelessness and housing in Ontario. And as service manager for housing and homelessness, York Region is responsible under the Provincial Housing Services Act 2011 for the planning, development, implementation, and delivery of housing and homelessness related services across the region. Service managers are responsible for developing and implementing a 10-year housing and homelessness plan. And these plans must include a community needs assessment and identify local priorities, goals, and objectives and targets to help measure success. The first 10-year housing plan, Housing Solutions, was initially approved by Council in 2014 and set the region's goals and actions to address housing and homelessness needs between 2014 and 2023. In 2019, the region completed a midpoint review, and Regional Council approved an updated plan with revised goals for the period between 2019 and 2023. These goals include increase the supply of affordable and rental housing, help people find and keep housing, strengthen the housing and homelessness system, and work on that 10-year housing and homelessness plan has begun. Next slide, please. To address challenges across the housing continuum, York Region is developing 3 implementation plans in 2024. Each of which will contribute to priorities of the next 10-year housing and homelessness plan, which is expected to go to Regional Council in 2025. Each of these plans will align with regional priorities, including our 2023 to 2027 strategic plan from vision to results. The first plan is the Homelessness Service System Plan, shown in orange on the slide. This plan will focus on both the immediate and long-term needs of residents at risk of or experiencing homelessness, including creating more emergency, transitional, and longer-term housing options to meet diverse needs. The Community Housing Development Master Plan will guide long-term investment to increase the supply of community housing, including Housing York Inc., and that is shown in gray on the slide. And the Affordable Private Market Housing Implementation Plan, which is shown in blue, will identify actions, advocacy, and partnerships to address private market housing gaps. Next slide, please. On the next two slides, you will see the different roles each level of government and community partners play in addressing homelessness. In terms of the federal government, in recognition of housing and homelessness challenges, the federal government implemented its national housing strategy in 2018, investing over $82 billion over 10 years to build communities and help Canadians access affordable homes. The federal strategy goals include cutting chronic homelessness in half, removing 530,000 families from housing need, and investing in the construction of up to 160,000 homes. The federal government created the Reaching Home program, a $4 billion community-based program aimed at preventing and reducing homelessness across Canada. And here in York Region, Reaching Home is managed by United Way of Greater Toronto. At the provincial level, the Housing Services Act 2011 sets out York Region's roles and responsibilities in the housing and homelessness sectors. The region's work in the homelessness sector often intersects with other provincial legislation and systems, including the health system, corrections, community safety, and public infrastructure. As previously mentioned, York Region is legally mandated under the Housing Services Act to provide housing and homelessness services, and the Provincial Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing is one of York Region's main partners in addressing homelessness. This ministry is responsible for setting the overall strategic goal of preventing and reducing homelessness in Ontario, implemented through legislation, regulation, and ministers' directives. Next slide, please. Building on the direction set by Council in approving the region's 10-year housing and homelessness plan, the region has 5 areas of responsibility. First, developing and delivering homelessness prevention and stability supports to people who are at risk of or experiencing homelessness. Second, funding a centralized intake line that provides 24/7 support to anyone who may be experiencing homelessness. Third, providing oversight and funding for emergency, transitional, and longer-term housing, including housing with supports. Fourth, planning, developing, and delivering innovative programs to address system gaps. And fifth, working closely with local municipalities and community agencies to ensure residents can access available services. Next slide, please. In the next section of this presentation, I will share some data about homelessness in York Region and Richmond Hill and outline how the region, working with many local community partners, including our partners here at Richmond Hill, is responding. Next slide, please. The by name list is a real-time list of people experiencing homelessness, including people who are experiencing chronic homelessness. People are added to and removed from the list over time, and the by name list helps York Region prioritize people experiencing homelessness to available services and supports. And we work with community partners to prioritize people from the by name list and attach them and connect them with available services and supports. Next slide, please. Chronic homelessness is generally defined as people who have been experiencing homelessness for 6 months or longer within the past year. The number of people identified in York Region experiencing chronic homelessness has been increasing from 124 people in 2019 to over 202 people in 2022. People experiencing chronic homelessness tend to have more complex needs stemming from a history of trauma, mental or physical health challenges. And this can include substance use challenges, legal and discrimination experiences. This creates demand on medical, policing, and other social services across York Region. Next slide, please. As we saw in the region's special counsel report in November, Help Seekers Technologies, which is a Canadian-based technology company focused on bringing data-led solutions to complex social issues, is helping York Region to develop a homelessness forecast for the region. Help Seekers has estimated that York Region could see up to 2,100 to 2,300 people experiencing homelessness in the next 5 years. The number of people in York Region experiencing homelessness and the complexity of the issue is posing significant challenges for our system. And we are not alone in this. other municipalities across the province and the country have been facing very, very similar challenges. Next slide, please. This slide shows an overview of the homelessness programs that York Region funds or delivers. The Housing Stability Program and Homelessness Prevention Program are delivered by the region and provide people with short-term financial assistance, such as support for rent, utility arrears, or last month's rent, and helping people stay housed and connected to services. Emergency and transitional housing is delivered by community agencies that provide temporary housing, drop-in services, case management supports, and other supports. The York Region's outreach program works in collaboration with local municipalities and community partners to provide short-term intensive case management, service navigation, referrals to community services, and crisis supports. Our community paramedicine and outreach response team is a partnership between the region's outreach team, York Region community paramedics, and 2 local doctors. And this team provides primary care, mental health and substance use, and social supports to those experiencing homelessness. We have drop-in programs throughout the region that provide supports to those at risk of or experiencing homelessness. As well, as you can see from this slide, we do have a number of programs that provide those supports, and happy to talk more about those when we go to the Q&A period. Next slide, please. The emergency housing and transitional housing system is meant to be short-term. It provides temporary accommodation and a range of personal supports and resources to help people recover from crisis and transition to stable, permanent housing. York Region currently funds 183 emergency housing beds and 66 transitional housing beds for a total of just under 250 year-round beds. During the cold weather season, York Region increases emergency housing capacity to provide additional space. Of note on this slide, the 360 Kids Youth Hub here in Richmond Hill includes 14 emergency housing beds and 11 transitional housing beds. In 2023, the Youth Hub supported 107 youth from ages 13 to 26. And in 2023, the average length of time for youth in emergency housing was 33 days, and the average length of time in transitional housing was 168 days. Next slide, please. The next few slides provide some additional information on homelessness here in Richmond Hill. Outreach workers in 2023, outreach workers visited 53 unique encampment locations in Richmond Hill. There were 234 visits in total, which is about 37% of all encampment visits across the region. And workers in this context visit sites multiple times. When outreach workers visited encampments to provide supports, they found between 1 and 5 people at 21 locations and no one present at 28 locations. As of January 2024, 69 people have been on the by name list, which is about 4% of the list, and they reported that they were from Richmond Hill. Across York Region, more than 1,100 households have accessed our homelessness prevention programs, including 114 households that are living in Richmond Hill. Next slide, please. Local municipalities are strong partners in the delivery of our programs and services. And this slide illustrates examples of where York Region and local municipalities have and can continue to work together. Our extreme weather response plans are activated when temperature thresholds are expected to be met. For cold weather alerts, it's -15 with or without wind chill. And we have also recently launched a heat relief plan for the summertime period when temperatures get extremely hot. Drop-in programs provide supports in safe community space for residents. We have our York Region outreach workers who frequently partner with local municipal staff, including bylaw, fire services, with the goal of helping people who are sheltering outdoors and to connect them to supports and services. In partnership with local municipalities, we work with our community paramedicine team to provide supports from a health perspective. And we continue to rely on all of the strong partnerships we have with Richmond Hill and all of our local municipalities in York Region. Next slide, please. This slide illustrates some key services located here in Richmond Hill, including emergency and transitional housing, seasonal shelter programs, and drop-in programs. The Youth Hub, as was mentioned earlier, which is located here and operated by 360 Kids, We have the seasonal shelter program that's operated through Blue Doors Mosaic Out of the Cold program. We have additional drop-in programs that are operating here to provide supports to those that need it. 360 Kids has its home-based drop-in program here. And then we also have the Craftsman Center has a drop-in program here as well. And that's currently operating out of the Wave Pool. And that program is set to transition a little bit later this spring. Next slide, please. So what I'd like to do is it's important that we bring the voice of individuals with lived experience into this work. And so this video is an opportunity to do that in a safe, respectful, and practical way. And in this next video, we'll hear some short stories from people that have experienced homelessness. You'll also hear from staff and community agencies who are providing supports to these inspiring individuals. So hopefully the video works.
It was hard. You think, losing your house, it's because you're not paying your bills or whatever. And that's not the case at all. We paid our bills. That was the most important thing, was to pay our bills first. I've lived in the same house for 10 years, and my landlord tried saying that we owed a lot more money for utilities, and because we kept questioning him, he already went and handed me eviction notice.
I thought that looking after my mom was going to last maybe a year or 2 years at the most, but that wasn't the case. And then I found myself, after she had died, where I was homeless.
And then I started asking my friends, we have to be out of here. Is there a way that we can come here? Most important thing was my girls not to be out on the street. I was so determined for the girls not to end up on the street. They're only 4 and 5. They don't understand. And I was all set to go and stay in a friend's backyard. At least I knew that they'd be safe somehow.
I managed to scrape together, I had enough money to be able to find a room, and a lot of people don't know this, and not even my family knows this. I was rented a closet, not a room. I was sleeping in a closet for $500, $600 a month for a closet.
Homelessness in York Region is at an all-time high. I feel that people who never expected to become homeless are now experiencing it for the first time. I've been seeing people lately who have been housed and are employed, and that just they had a divorce or a legal issue come up or an eviction by a landlord. And they're showing up at our shelter completely confused, not knowing that these services even exist.
There's not one way to enter into homelessness. Sometimes our lovely outreach team does their best to divert to other options, or they will call us and say, this person has been and their family have been living in a car and we would like them to enter in. And they come in and they are given enough support and welcomed to build on their next steps.
I would say it was the second day that we were here. I did my intake and I went into Amanda, and she was very welcoming, very warm, and kind of scared me at first because I'm not used to this, and I'm not used to somebody wanting to help.
I don't have family here. I don't have friends. But when I was live here in Belinda's place was nice because I don't scare me where I will go the next week. It's very difficult, but here can I make hard work a lot for make real my goals.
By giving individuals more opportunities with shelters and emergency housing beds, then we are allowing them to work on their lives and get towards life stabilization.
A lot of the individuals who reside in the shelter have been residing in the community for many decades, and they hope to find housing within that same community that they've always been in.
Finding out the resources has given me more confidence, and seeing other families leave from here because they've found a place has given me even more confidence that I will find something. And my main goal is to get a house and get back to work.
There's another thing that In from the Cold and these support groups gave me is a new will on life. Although I've just landed at this house, I've only been there for 3 weeks now, I do really want to give back in some sort of way.
You have to keep pushing forward. A door will close and a door will open. And just keep pushing right through. And don't give up.
I hope that everybody just recognizes that we are a community, and as a community, we should be trying to support one another so that it's not costing us more in the long run, and we are helping individuals get towards life stabilization. That's what I hope.
Great. Okay, thank you. So I encourage you to visit the website. It's related to our homelessness service system plan that we are York Region is in the process of developing. So that's the focus of the last part of the presentation, and I'll turn it back to you, Mayor West. So next slide. The homelessness service system plan will be guided by 2 aspirational goals, which were developed through preliminary consultations and research. The first proposed goal is to end chronic homelessness in York Region. And the second proposed goal is to strengthen the human rights-based approach to respond to homelessness in York Region. Taking a human rights-based approach means ensuring meaningful and inclusive participation of people with lived experience in the design and implementation of policies, programs, and services. And this goal would be very consistent with the Ontario Human Rights Code and with guidance from the Canadian Human Rights Commission. In this approach, enforcement is considered as a last and unavoidable measure related primarily to health and safety concerns. Next slide, please. Proposed actions in the homelessness service system plan will be organized under 3 priority areas. The first priority is prevention and diversion. The best way to end homelessness is to stop it from happening in the first place, and homelessness prevention and diversion refer to actions that reduce the likelihood that someone will experience homelessness. The second priority is intervention and housing stability. And under this priority, people experiencing homelessness are provided with temporary accommodations and supports to help them quickly find safe and permanent housing. These kinds of intervention measures are intended to be time limited because what we don't want is for people to become further entrenched in homelessness. Finally, our last priority is a focus on a systems response. Recognizing that an effective systems response aligns actions across sectors to establish an integrated homelessness service system. And this relies on the coordination and collaboration of service providers, helping people at risk of or experiencing homelessness access the services and supports they need. By prioritizing prevention and diversion, intervention and stability, and a systems response, we aim to address the growing challenge of homelessness in a comprehensive and evidence-informed way, ensuring that when it occurs, and if it occurs, it is a brief and non-reoccurring event. Next slide, please. The first stage in developing the plan took place over 2023 and focused on identifying the scope of the plan. And we conducted a number of interviews with key agency leaders and regional staff, and those have helped inform the proposed goals and priority areas that have been identified. Phase 1 of this work has culminated in the November 2023 special council meeting that we had in the region. And then through Q1 of 2024, we are engaging with members of regional council, local municipal councils, municipal staff, community agency leaders, as well as people with lived experience as we continue to develop the plan. And these consultations will include lots of opportunities for conversation and discussion. And we're anticipating the plan will come forward to Regional Council in Q1 or Q2, or sorry, Q2 or Q3 of 2024. Next slide, please. So I'll open it up for discussion at this point. We did have a few questions that, we can have on the screen, but also happy to answer questions, share information, and respond to as I can. So thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much, Kevin. We appreciate that. So I'll open it up. I guess, Mr. Clerk, we need a motion to receive the presentation. So why don't we do that, and then we'll open it up for discussion. Okay, Regional Local Councillor Chan and Councillor Davidson. So go ahead. Did you want to say anything? You're moving the motions.
Yes. I guess we need to vote for it now. Okay. Thank you very much, Kelvin, Mr. Powell, for coming. And I have seen your presentation before at the York Region Human Services Board. However, homelessness is an issue that's certainly not only affecting Richmond Hill, York Region, but I might say across all urban centers, not just in North America. I like the part that, because you raised question. So I like the part which is number one, prevention and diversion. I think prevention to the best we can would be helpful. Perhaps that might link to your question 2 as well, or 3. A number of times, and is I think one of the person actually in the video talk about it. It's relating to eviction from people who are renting. So it's such a complex issue. It could be the rent is high, but it's also about looking at the trend or the numbers on rent eviction. And to that end, I suppose that the community stakeholders, including legal aid and the legal community, in fact, I believe both Canadian Bar Association, American Bar Association, they actually have pro bono services to help for people in Ontario, for example, going to a landlord and tenant tribunal. So that's one aspect, because that's a prevention before actually move from a rental place to somewhere. The other thing that I always feel that in a way, it may be a scary thought. We all are maybe an accident away, sickness away from potentially being one of the statistics, so-called, in the homelessness. Not we wanted. The gentleman who mentioned about that, yeah, after his mom passed away, you see, that's what happened. So it's really affecting all of us. We all have a stake in it, because quite often in Richmond Hill or other communities say, oh, do we have homelessness in Richmond Hill, York Region? I say, yes. They're not all just downtown Toronto as you think it is. So it's the education aspect as well. The other thing too may not be related to your question per se. I have to be honest, I'm quite often frustrated, particularly in the south end of, it's not just south end, along the railroad track, where some of the encampment had happened. And it comes across a jurisdictional issue. It's neither land owned by city or region, but it's Metrolinx, and then also CN, and then Infrastructure Ontario. So from a diversion, I'll talk about prevention already, from a diversion and dealing with it, we really need to engage all these relevant parties, because I don't know, it's only in Richmond Hill, but I think it's more than that. I understand in Thornhill area, Markham area, one side, the railway, I guess, because they are, in a sense, an area is kind of, I don't want to call nobody's land, but the complication I just mentioned, cross-jurisdictional. So that's something to look at. I do appreciate the work of the York Region community support, because I understand every time I brought to the attention of the region, the outreach workers go out there and speak with those, engage people actually in the tent. But perhaps you know better than I do, not necessarily everyone in the homelessness situation want to get to a transitional shelter. So that may be another issue. We need to look at how we can deal with it, to work with leaders such as a Blue Door and things, organization like that. They seem to have success. Based on the slides just presented, Blue Door, I'm single them out because they already provide 100 beds for transitional. We need to really engage in more of those community partners. In addition, of course, the Youth Hub 360 Kids in right in the downtown heritage area in Richmond Hill. So I gather at some point in time, there's a national summit on auto theft, but I will advocate that we have if not a regional, provincial, or national summit on homelessness need to be done, and we could be advocated from your region. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Councillor Davidson.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I don't think any of us would disagree. We would love to see everybody have a place to live and feel safe. Am I right? When I was a kid, and I've mentioned this before, my neighborhood was surrounded by what was called Ontario housing at the time. What did somehow or when did the responsibility for this shift from province and feds to municipalities, or do I have that wrong?
Yeah, so it was, in my understanding, it was sort of the late 90s. All of the housing structure was basically downloaded to local municipalities or the region in some cases to manage. So as part of a full sort of downloading of services that happened again in that late 90s period. And so one of the challenges has been there just has not been investment in housing that is affordable for many, many years in terms of the federal and provincial levels.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair. So you showed a graphic there that showed some money coming from the federal government. What happens to that? Is it near enough? And we saw the legislation from the Ontario side of the graphic, but I didn't see any money attached to that. So how are municipalities even have hopes of of reaching these goals of getting people off the street?
Yeah, no, it's an excellent question, Councillor Davidson. So, you know, I could be here a long time, but I'll try to sort of frame it as best I can. The responsibility for affordable housing was downloaded to municipalities in the late 90s. Municipalities have done what they can. There are some transfers that the municipalities do receive from the federal and provincial governments to support that. And here in York Region, we have Housing York Inc. is our housing provider that does provide supportive housing to individuals. Part of the challenge for us is that you know we work within the funding and the constraints that we have overall, and there is as you know a considerable wait list to access Housing York Inc. Services and buildings.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. So it feels so hard to get to these goals. I feel like we need to think out of the box, and I'm not an expert, you are. But honestly, as a counselor, I hear from people, you know, how can I help? How can I help? Is there any models where people can donate to a family and help them with their rent directly, sort of like a foster family or foster kids, only you're helping the family get along? Or I know that 360 Kids sometimes says you have an extra bed for a kid for a while. Are there any municipalities that have had success in reaching out to the community directly and saying, hey, do you have a basement apartment? And is there money from the municipality or money from government levels to offset the cost of that for somebody who might be willing to help in a one-on-one rather than an institutional way? Through you, Mr. Chair.
No, thank you, Councillor Davidson. So I'm just going to pause for 1 second. I'm just going to check in with Monica on one question. I'm just going to ask Monica to address that question. She probably has a little more detail than I do.
Thank you for the question. Through the mayor, 360 Kids does run a program called Night Stop. So that is a program where they do open up they partner with people in the community who may have a spare bed and provide a space for youth to come in. So that is certainly something that is a valuable program for youth to be able to have somewhere to stay, and it is a good diversion program. There are also all of our community service providers do partner with private landlords, and so they are renting units that then would be, rented out to people who are looking for housing through their programs. This is, part of it's a smaller program, so they are working with private landlords to try to get more housing in the community. It's not a one-off program, but it certainly is something that all of our service providers are doing right now to get more housing units, rental units in the community for people experiencing homelessness.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, I guess this isn't new. I just want to say there are, over 1 million people in York Region, and so many of them are caring, and so many of them are doing okay, and some of them are actually lonely. And I think some problems are just too big for the municipality to solve, and this might be one of them. And we need the community and have to start thinking of ways to directly involve and appeal to the community. And I'm sure there's legal issues and money, but seriously, we have to start thinking of ways to have the community help each other. And I don't think that's absurd. I think it's possible. I'm not trying to tell you how to do your job, but I do think there's might be something to tap there. The other question I have is Oak Ridges. I've lived there for 25 years. I've never seen homelessness, and we're starting to see folks set up at a local park. And I get messages from alarmed residents. Can you tell me what the rights are of folks who set up in a public space, and what options they have, and what the rights are for the property owners in surrounding areas in terms of how we coexist?
So through you, Mayor. Great question. I will actually first, I just wanted to just share a perspective. So we have staff that are watching today. They're going to take notes, and this is incredibly important feedback. So we really appreciate everything we're hearing today, and we'll take that into consideration as we're developing the plan. So really appreciate your ideas. So keep them coming. That's great. So I think the second question, maybe I just start with, if you come across an encampment, a situation that you're dealing with, please engage with us at York Region. And we have outreach staff who are very specialized, very skilled at working with individuals who may be living unsheltered. And so that's sort of my first comment. I think secondarily for us, we want to be very supportive. And so there have been some recent court decisions that have really emphasized the need for us to take a very human rights based approach to supporting individuals who may be living unsheltered. And so that really, and that's kind of where I went back to really encouraging everyone to connect with our staff, and we can support a response to that situation. So it really does depend who owns the property, what's the context around the individuals that are there, and then working in partnership with Richmond Hill staff and staff from other local municipalities, depending on what the context is. We work with your bylaw team, with your fire services team, and others, community-based mental health providers and others to support those individuals, always working to advance a successful outcome for individuals that may be living unsheltered there, and in fact, may be in very unsafe conditions. So we do want to take a very human rights-based approach, but definitely want to support them and address the concerns.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I only have 2 minutes left, but can you just tell us briefly? So I call an outreach number, or I go to your homeless page as a resident, I look up, I get the number. What happens next? Do you dispatch an outreach group?
Yeah, basically, yeah. So we have Monica's with me, so that we have this tremendous group of staff who are highly trained, incredibly passionate about the work they do. and are quite, quite excellent at connecting with those individuals and working to find supports and solutions for them. So, I mean, reach out to us. Yeah, absolutely. We have the central intake line as well for those that may need some supports, and Salvation Army runs that line for us. But we can absolutely, provide those supports.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. The next person is Councillor Silowitz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Kevin, Monica. Greatly appreciate this. The presentation was excellent. If I could ask that you could please send it to members of council by email so that we have a copy of it and we can have a quick reference guide. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. I wanted to mention that I find the York Region Outreach entity amazing, absolutely amazing. And they can be reached at outreach@york.ca. And they can also be reached at the 1-866-553-4053 number. And that is manned from 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. I don't know if there's been a change, but those are the times that I always know they will pick up the phone. It is vital. It is a vital entity to assist the municipalities in what we have to deal with homelessness. We have many organizations, cultural as well as religious, as 360 Kids, Home on the Hill, Blue Door, In From the Cold, the Craftsman Center. They all assist Housing York. And what they do as well is imperative. So I want to give a shout out to them as well. And a shout out to Commissioner Steele, who last year was instrumental in organizing a drop-in center in Ward 5. We used the Lois Hansey Pool Aquatic Center that was down, not being used because of the pandemic. And so it was a place that could be used as a daily drop-in center. And I want to say that I was concerned at the beginning because while it's in an excellent location at Yonge and Major Mackenzie, there's also a park there, the Mount Pleasant Park. So, and that sits right next to the Dynasty condo complex and the Pepper Hill townhouse complex. So, but my concerns were never realized. We had some complaints from some residents in the condo complex, and we dealt with them very quickly, as did Outreach, and they were wonderful. And those the complaints only came in, or concerns really, I really don't want to say complaints. The concerns came in because the condo people would see obviously a homeless person in the park, and they wanted to make sure that that person is okay. So I have enormous respect for everybody who works at York Region Outreach. When I have had to contact them, if I've had a concern or a complaint sent to me, either with what happened at Mount Pleasant Park or loitering and stuff like that, and our Langstaff area down in the southern end of Ward 5 is we get many encampments there. They act on the phone call, the email. It's immediate. And I really want to thank the region for that. I think that you are doing an absolutely superb job. And homelessness exists everywhere. I don't believe there would be one location that would be free of it. It's rampant in Beverly Hills and Los Angeles. So it's everywhere. And I particularly want to thank 360 Kids for the work that they do with our homeless youth. And they are a remarkable organization. So thank you again. I just wanted to mention that for the record. And again, my thanks to Commissioner Steele and her staff who worked with your staff. And we managed to get that done. And I would have absolutely no problem doing that again in Ward 5 if it was a necessity. So thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Hsu.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Mr. Powell, for the presentation. my first question is regarding the slide number 8 and 9. It shows that the homelessness issue is getting worse in recent years and will be getting worse in coming years. And in my opinion, before all levels of government fixing this issue, we have to find out the underlying causes. So I just want to ask Mr. Powell, in your opinion, what is the root cause of the worsening of this problem?
So yeah, no, that's a great question, Councillor Shu. I would hazard not to wade too far into the cost estimates at this point. One of the things that we're doing as we're developing this plan is really looking at forecasting the demands and the needs in York Region over the next number of years, and we feel that that's a really sort of a critical foundational piece to the work, so that we can really get a sense of what are the numbers going to be like in 5 years and in 10 years from now, based on all of the available data that we have at the moment. From there, we can then look at building out additional details around costing. I think for us, the challenge as well is, as I'm sure you address here in this chamber, is the constrained fiscal environment that we continue to operate in. And that's an important consideration. With additional resources, we can do more, but we also have to manage within the realities of the communities that we're in and the context that we're in. And we work very hard within our homelessness community programs division at York Region, and we work very hard to maintain and manage within our existing funding. And we also continue to advocate for additional supports to the provincial and federal governments for ongoing additional funding. And that's a continuous effort through various tables and working groups that we participate in. So I appreciate the question, and perhaps when I'm back here next year, I might be able to share further updates with you on that.
My second question for the chair is, recently my neighbors in my ward, in Hillsville, somewhere elsewhere, have noticed individuals consistently present in our community, often ringing doorbells, raising concerns about the nearby area of homelessness to public safety. And I'm just wondering to know if the York Regional Government has actively collaborated with the York Regional Police to address this pressing issue.
So just to clarify, is the situation that you're experiencing, there are individuals that are ringing doorbells in the community that they appear to be at risk of experiencing homelessness?
Yes, and my neighbors has recognized those people are just the people homeless, and they have encampment nearby in their community. So they recognize that there's homeless people walking around in the community and poses the safety problem. So I'm just wondering if the York Regional Government has actively collaborated with the YOP to address this issue.
Yeah, so absolutely. So we do work very closely with York Region Police. If you're, and I would just encourage you, if you're experiencing any kind of if anyone's experiencing anything that they feel unsafe or are not supported, then please, obviously contact your YRP. We work very closely with the officers at York Region Police. As mentioned, our outreach workers connect with them and often actually will visit potential encampments together as needed to address any supports that are there. It's not our first approach. We typically will have an outreach worker attend to individuals in the community through an outreach basis, connect with them, ask them what supports they may need, what challenges they may be experiencing, and we go from there. We try to take, again, a very human rights-based approach to how we can support those individuals. But I think if you do have community safety concerns, then it's important that you contact the appropriate authorities.
Okay. My next question for the chair is, could you please describe the process when a homeless person is reported in the park, for example, and what will happen?
Councillor, are you asking what is the procedure when somebody reports that? Okay.
Yeah, this is the procedure when someone is reported in the park is homeless. So what will happen?
Right. So yeah. So I think basically what would happen is if we do get a request, someone contacts us directly and says, you know, that there's an individual who does appear to be in distress in the park or not supported. So we'll have staff go out and attend that park and visit with those individuals and have a very, you know, very sort of engaging conversation at the appropriate level to engage and quite often ask them, how are they doing? How are you doing, and how can we help, and how can we support you? You know, there's all kinds of contexts that this could possibly be happening within an individual. Could be in some type of a mental health crisis or other crisis, and so the outreach worker would then engage with other supports. You know, engage and bring in other experts to potentially support the individual. So. Again, I really just encourage, if you do come across individuals, please let us know. We'll definitely have our staff come out and visit and see what's happening.
Through the chair, but my last question is, are there any provisions to alert homeless person from using construction site as it is dangerous for them? Is there any provision to alert them from using the construction sites?
Okay, so I may want to defer that to you, Mayor West. I'm not sure. Is the question from a signage perspective or?
Yeah, the signage, something like signage to alert them from using the construction site.
Okay, I think I'll defer that to you, Mayor West.
So staff maybe can help me if I misspeak here, but there have been at least one and two, I think, related court decisions that have been made that have restricted, I guess is the right word, the ability for a municipality to go in and just remove people from public spaces. And the rationale behind the initial decision was that unless we have a place for them to go, that, you know, it's against their human rights for us to be removing them from a public space. And I mean, you know, that was the decision of the court. There was another decision, I believe, was it Kitchener, subsequent to that maybe has a little bit of a caveat to that. But I mean, the principle behind that, I guess, is that, you know, unless we have a place for them to go, removing them from a park isn't going to solve anybody's problem, at least in the longer term. But in terms of signage and stuff, I mean, given that court decision, I'm not sure that how effective something like signage would be. But I mean, that's maybe something I know our staff also, and Mr. Powell mentioned this, when a complaint comes in, you know, in one of our properties, our bylaw folks and often YRP and certainly members of the group from York Region will go to the encampment to see if we can support them in some way, and frankly, hopefully, give them what they need so that they can actually leave where they are. I'm not sure that really answers your question.
Yeah, if the place is not a park, it's a working construction site.
Oh, well,
yeah,
that would be a private property matter. Like it's the landowner who would have, you know, whatever jurisdiction over that land. So if it's owned by somebody other than us, that is a slightly different different procedure. But I maybe shouldn't speak on that as I'm not sure of the exact legalities.
Okay, so I will leave it. Maybe I ask through other channels. That's all about my question. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Powell, and thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's all my question. Thank you.
Yeah. I think, Councillor, if I may, the one thing that was said at the beginning of the presentation that's probably relevant here is that, you know, if citizens are seeing situations where people are living in public places or you know, private places, I suppose, you know, there is a contact that they can reach out to the Region of York and I suspect our bylaw as well. And, you know, and the appropriate resources would be dispatched, you know, at that time, like I described earlier. And I think that that's something that needs to be communicated with the public. So, you know, and as you said, if there's something really dangerous going on, you know, that would be a matter for the police and you know, and that would be reported in that way.
That makes sense. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much. Through you, the chair. I definitely like to thank you for coming here today and bringing the presentation. Kevin, Monica, much appreciated. I do want to speak to a couple of things that have already been spoken to, and one of them is to do with the rights of individuals, whether it be those experiencing homelessness or those that are living in proximity to those that are experiencing homelessness, particularly if they're sheltering in a park or something like that. And I go back to that, the Waterloo decision that people tend to reference. And I read that decision, inside out and backwards. And there are some things in there that I think are up for interpretation. And I believe that the judge was trying to indicate that on that particular decision, the property that that was in question did not have a particular purpose at that time. It was next to the railway station, and it was not designated as a park or anything else. So the people that were living in that particular property, the decision was that, he sided with those living there. And this is why he felt that if you don't have someplace for them to go, then they should be allowed to remain. But he was making it very clear it's because that property did not have a purpose. So if somebody could interpret that to say, well, if the property did have a particular purpose, such as a park, that decision might have been different. So it's something that people have to take a look at and, figure out, is this what the intention was moving forward? So I just wanted to throw that out there. One of the things that was mentioned by one of the staff in the video was that about it costing us more in the long run. And I think this is the thing, is that we're not looking at this in the long run. Everything that we've been talking about here is short term. We're talking about the various agencies and so forth, and how it is spiking in, what is it? The end of 2023, we got approximately 850 persons. And then, but we're predicting that within just 5 years, it's going to be 2,300. And so we seem to be throwing all this money towards short-term initiatives, and $81 million over 10 years, that could buy or create a lot of housing, that would, in my opinion, actually address a lot of the problems that we're seeing. It's very evident that when you have housing, a lot of the other things start to fall. The issues that we have with, mental health and addiction and things like that. When people have a roof over their head, we don't see the same types of numbers. So I know that you said there's staff watching this. My take on this is that we need to find some way to have that money that we're receiving go into the long-term mix. What I'm seeing right now is that money, once it's spent, it's gone. Whereas what I'd like to see is that we have some sort of thing to show for it at the end of the day. So if we're talking about transitional housing as an example, I'd rather see that money going into us creating that housing, maintaining that housing so that we have the control over it in the future. And I did have one other question. So those are all my comments. The only question I have was on slide 8, and it was in regards to the summer months. It seems that homelessness numbers seem to drop for some reason. I suspect that they really don't drop. It's just a matter of that people are finding outdoor sheltering and they're just not being reported. Maybe you could speak to that.
Yeah, I think just to share a couple of quick comments, I think I really appreciate Councillor Thompson, your perspectives and comments in terms of input as we develop our plan. And as I started in the conversation this morning, we are also developing a couple of other additional plans. That there's a large 10-year housing and homelessness plan that is under development. The plan that we're talking about today fits into that. So I think your comments are, very, very appropriate, and we'll build that into those plans going forward. So thank you for that. I think the question of, looking at slide 8 and seeing sort of the dips and things, and, sometimes you can kind of tie that to the summer months. I think for us, what our experience is, looking at the data, what we understand is over 80% of homelessness is completely hidden. So it is not tracked, it's not picked up in any of the data. We operate our system here in New York Region operates through a federal system called HIFIS that we report into and track all of our data. One of the things that we continue to be challenged with is hidden homelessness. And so you have individuals who are couch surfing, or they're sleeping in their cars, or they're not connecting with services. And so we're not able to pick them up in the data. And so that's some further work as we continue to develop our plan. We very much want it to be very much a data-informed and evidence-based plan. The challenge being, we know that there's a number of individuals that we're not able to pick up in our accounting, if you will. So that's some further work for us to do, and we're looking at best practices across Ontario, Canada, and beyond on how to do that.
Right. Thank you for those. My time is up, but as I said, my comments are more towards how we get to the long term. The short term is spiking at a rate that is crazy, and it seems to me that the long term is where we'll finally see this start to reverse. So thank you for allowing me to make my comments.
Thank you. Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you very much for the presentation. This is very sad. This is really, really sad. And but at the same time, it's very frustrating, especially for municipalities. So when I look at the slide 5, responsibilities of federal and provincial governments, there's a long list of responsibility that are, theirs. When I look at local municipalities, only 3 points. Okay. Partnering, planning, and providing homelessness services, develop bylaws for public property, and the other one is contributing to and approving plans for new development. Just have a quick question. Develop bylaws for public property. What does that mean for you, Mr. Mayor?
So perhaps through you, Mayor West, I will defer that one to your team.
Okay, well, I'm not really sure what it's referring to on the slide.
Slide number 6, local municipalities' responsibility. The second bullet point, develop bylaws for public property.
Yes. So, I mean, so this could be the context of sort of signage around, loitering and things like that in parks and things like that. That would probably be something we would be looking at, or making sure that, individuals are supported and safe. And if they're in a park, that's not a safe context or setting for us. So what we would do is we would have our outreach workers, engage with that individual, and then we would connect with Richmond Hill bylaw or other supports to ask, what can we do? How can we support this individual to, as Mayor West mentioned, to ultimately to move on to somewhere else.
I see. Well, thank you.
So,
yeah, there's only so much we can do, just exactly what I'm trying to say. Right?
Yeah, that's right. And it's really very much a partnership to support individuals to move and to be supported in the way that they need to be. And ultimately, encampments and parks are not safe settings for individuals to be in. And so we want to support them to be successful and to move to more either emergency or transitional housing.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear that we have a tremendous outreach team, but do those homeless people know where to look for help, or, any chance that any circumstances that they refuse help? Through Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, through you, Mary. Again, great question. We have a range of experiences in terms of staff as they connect with individuals who may be experiencing homelessness. And it can range from people who are very happy to hear from us and want to be supported to individuals who are not happy to hear from us. And so, may refuse service. And so what we do is our staff, they take an approach where they connect with the individual. They may engage just briefly, but then what they'll do is they'll come back. And so it's a bit of a sustained process. They work very hard to build a relationship with that individual. And because a lot of individuals that may be living unsheltered, they've experienced in most cases, a very significant trauma in their lives. And so it does take a very supportive, encouraging and engaging and repetitive kind of process to build that relationship. And that's what we find to be most successful.
Thank you. Do these homeless people have work? Do they have a job? Or some of them do, some of them don't?
So this is a great question. And through you, Mayor, what we're experiencing and it does go to the data, but it's what we're experiencing is more and more frequently and very, very unfortunately, yes, they do. They are employed. And so we have individuals in our emergency shelters, we have them in our transitional housing that are employed and they have jobs. And the cost of living, the cost of housing has gotten has risen so much in recent years that they're needing a little bit of that additional support and help to manage.
Thank you. So on the presentation, 4% of the homeless people in Richmond Hill is from Richmond Hill. What about the other 96%? Where are they from and why they choose Richmond Hill? Through you, Mr. Mayor.
So sorry, which slide is that, or Monica?
I remember that the slide number 13, 4.1% reported that they lived in Richmond Hill before they became homeless. So only 4% out of that 69 people. So what about, the others? Where are they from? Why they choose Richmond Hill? I'm just trying to gather some.
Okay, so sorry, yeah, just to clarify, so that what that bullet is, there's a much greater number on the by name list.
Right.
I think I can't remember on the slide exactly, but there's a much higher number on the by name list for all across York Region, and 69 individuals, when they meet with staff and they fill in the information for the by name list, they're self-identifying as being from Richmond Hill. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a much greater number, 96% are on the by name list, and they would self-identify as being from, East Goldenberry or from Markham or from Vaughan or from Georgina.
All right, thank you. Is there any particular reason that they pick a certain location to reside, to encamp, like public property? How do they choose their location?
That's a great question through you, Mayor. I don't think there's any, I don't have any specific perspective to share. I think it's what we would, perhaps what I could do is share anecdotally. There are areas in municipalities that individuals may choose to live unsheltered that are a little bit out of the direct visibility. And I think one of your colleagues mentioned a challenge with rail corridors. We have, in some cases behind buildings. It just varies.
Thank you. And we've been seeing an increase of panhandlers at traffic lights intersection. Are those homeless people? Do they reach out to them?
We can definitely have staff connect with those individuals as needed. In that context, it's a little bit more challenging because we'd be happy to have staff connect with them. The challenge is we may not always know the full context of what that individual experience is, but we would definitely have staff connect with them.
All right. So do they consider it homeless? They claim they're homeless, but.
Yeah. So that way, for us, great question. I totally get it. For us, what it is, it's really just about connecting with that individual, we have a very low barrier approach to that conversation. We would just, staff would come and have a conversation with that individual, say, hi, how are you? Can we help you? Are there things that we can do to help you? Are there organizations and community-based organizations that might be able to support you in a different way? This isn't safe to be here in this space in traffic. How can we support you?
Thank you. So just a follow-up question. So what can we do through you, Mr. Mayor, maybe to our staff, to those panhandlers? I got complaints from residents that they don't want to see those people, begging for money at the traffic lights when they stop. Anything we can do, any bylaws, or is this a region problem, or is this ours? Mr. Mayor, whoever want to answer.
Through the mayor. So I think it's dangerous to necessarily put the two things together. I would say that panhandlers certainly aren't all necessarily homeless. People do things for different reasons. I do know that Toronto has a bylaw on books. It's an anti-panhandling bylaw. It's been incredibly unsuccessful. It's been in the news lately, actually, because it's essentially it penalizes people monetarily for panhandling, which intuitively doesn't make much sense. So while a bylaw is possible, no one's really come up with one that's effective. And it's something that would be reported to the police, particularly if they're interfering with traffic right now.
Thank you. Yeah. All right. So I almost exhausted my question. In your ideal world, what is the most effective solution? Is money going to solve everything? Mr. Mayor.
So I think your colleague, Councillor Thompson, touched on it a little bit. One of the foundational pieces to developing the homelessness service system plan will be to focus on a housing first approach. So that's something consistent that we would be looking at across both this plan and also the 10-year housing and homelessness plan. So having and finding a place for an individual to live that's safe and secure, that's an incredibly important part of the plan. And then I think as well, in part of this conversation is the prevention component and how can we support and prevent homelessness from happening in the first place. And I didn't get a chance to talk a lot about that today, but that's a big part of the work that we do in York Region. And so, we have staff who will engage and provide supports to an individual who comes forward and says, I can't make my rent, can't pay rent this month. So we'll engage with them and we'll connect with them and work with them to provide some support so that they can stay connected to that housing. And so I think that's another big part of where we'd like to focus on our plan coming forward. And so that's common across lots of different sectors of healthcare, other sectors, but that prevention focus for us is something we'd like to really advance.
Thank you. Okay, I think is it really unfair that this is being downloaded from the federal and provincial governments? Are they listening? I think one of the things we can do is advocate to our MPs and MPPs. Do they get to look at this presentation, get a chance to understand more about what's happening?
So advocacy is absolutely part of our ongoing work. It's something that we do. We connect with provincial government, federal governments. We're constantly in that space. I think we do have to recognize as well a good portion of the funding that we receive as York Region, that I receive and my team executes, does come from the province. So that's an important, that needs to be recognized. And so we do get a lot of support from the province to deliver the programs that we have and we deliver now. We can always do more. We could always benefit from further additional investment. The federal government as well, in my presentation, they have also provided a lot of support, predominantly through United Way in what's referred to as the Reaching Home program and other supports as well. So from my perspective, it is about working collaboratively with the province and the federal government, continue those dialogues and conversations with elected officials and my counterparts at the staff level, continuing that advocacy and working together.
Thank you. So I would just ending by thanking staff, thanking yourself and your team for doing such great work. And I have a chance to visit the wave pool a few months ago, delivering hot food to those homeless people, but not from me, from a business owner in my ward. Thanks to the mayor, he referred him to me, and it was a great thing to do. And the Craftsman Center, I think they're in charge of the wave pool and 360 Kids and all the agency. I would like to also thank them for working so hard on this one. I think in conclusion, just if there is a public education piece that you can make and that I think that will help. A lot of our residents, I think they have a misunderstanding on homelessness. And it's not only just concerns, but we sometimes got complaints, and we are always on the front line taking those complaints. So if we can have a public education piece, I think that would be appreciated. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor. I just add, Ontario Big City Mayors has had on several occasions sent motions that are directly related to this from cities across the province to the provincial and federal governments for funding and to fill in the gaps as well. So there is definitely advocacy work that needs to be done, but there is advocacy work that's being done. But it's, that's not the end of it for sure. Okay, Councillor Tree.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Chair. My name is Simon, so I'm the Ward 4 Councillor. Also, Ward 2 Councillor Scott Thompson. We are managing. We are part of the Young Corridor Village Core local councillors. So we being reported by the residents a lot regarding homeless along the Young Street. And thank you so much for coming to our city, give us a lot of the information, especially for from a region perspective, how we collaborate with working with Yellow Brick and Blue Door and also 360, etc., to provide a lot of services to help the homeless people. A few days ago, I just talked with some friends regarding to this homeless issues as well. There was one thought I want to share with all the members here and also from your side as well. So Elon Musk, he's making affordable housing use case technologies. The cost for that kind of pre-designed solutions around 20K or to 30K US dollars, and it can be installed in 2 days. I'm just thinking from the short-term perspective, this shelter is definitely going to help people. It's better than nothing, right? Just sending to the homeless people to different locations. And if that technology possible, the cost is very low, can we make maybe research to dig out, is that feasible for our region's perspective, find a piece of land, build up that fast housing shelters available at short term. So I know the cost is very expensive. I think many council members mentioned that. Well, if the cost can be reduced via it's very low numbers, it's like a temporary solutions, shelter is better than just staying outside looking for existing house. That's going to be cost a lot. And from a long-term perspective, I'm thinking as well, if that technology can be available not only for homeless people, but for the new or young generation, it might be achievable a lot as well. I heard news, our premier just to announce a news, maybe this is only plan to build up that kind of temporary houses across the entire country. If the technology also can be used in that area, our pricing for the housing for affordable housing definitely going to be dropped down a lot. But the side effect here is because the cost is too low, it might impact current real estate, right? How many employees working in this industry now? If the housing price become 50K or 60K for entire the housing, how many people going to lose job? So I don't know that side effect yet. We're just discussing this idea. So a long term, that maybe the young generation think the new technology could be benefiting their life. They might switching from our traditional living habits, right? We pay $1 million to buy a new house. Maybe in the future, 20 years later on, they just pay 50 or 60K to buy a different styles of the housing. That might be achievable. So long term, definitely, we need a balance, right? Do we have a bylaw from Canadian perspective? Is there any law to permit that type of building? Our building code might be changed as well. Also, other effects, for example, infrastructures, watering system, and also health. That's type of the fact. I'm just bringing this concept here. Can we just explore that maybe alternative of options? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, so I'll just maybe wrap it up here. So anyway, thank you very much to both of you for coming today. I think this achieved exactly what I had hoped when we invited you to come. I think you got some really, really good input. I'm actually quite pleased to hear the comments that were made. And I think, clearly my colleagues here have been doing quite a bit of homework and frankly, living the concerns that people are having in our community are around this. And I mean, I think, there's two sets of concerns here. There's concerns about, people living in places that they shouldn't be living and all the concerns around that. But I think there's also a lot of concerns for the actual people that are living in those conditions that we clearly know is not healthy and not good for people to be living in. And I think the community genuinely does want to help in that regard as well. I just will say one thing, and yesterday or last night we had a meeting about our development charges bylaw, and at the risk of going on and on about this one point, I will say that of the money that the region is not getting anymore because of Bill 23 with regard to development charges, a lot of that is because Bill 23 disallows us to collect development charges on social housing. And because our social housing stock is relatively low due to some changes, I think that, or at least are in partial reason that, Kevin, you had mentioned, we haven't been building social housing in quite some time. The amount of money and the quantum of money that we're now needing to make up that we're not receiving to build social housing is not helping us to provide, social housing projects. So what I feel like we're doing without adequate places for us to be building and building as quickly as we can, because we can't really afford to do it very easily, we're looking at a whole bunch of other creative solutions, which I applaud staff for doing. But the reality is we are short, places to realistically be putting people at a cost that the people that are experiencing homelessness can access. But I also would point out too that the amount of work that I believe we need to be doing, and the more I think about this and the more time that goes on, is around mental health. I mean, we want people to be in housing, like you mentioned housing first, but if there's underlying serious health or mental health or both problems, it's hard to know which is to address first, the chicken or the eggs kind of thing. But we really do need, at the end of the day, to find a place for them to be warm, treat whatever they need to be treated and get these people back on their feet. So anyway, I appreciate the work that's being done on the homelessness services plan. And I think that the outcome of that will direct the funding and the work that needs to be done in a more focused way, given our current situation that we're finding ourselves in. So with that being said, we have a motion to receive the presentation. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries unanimously. Thank you very much for coming. So we do have a bylaw that we need to pass to confirm the proceedings of this council meeting. Councillor Davidson, Councillor Thompson, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. And motion to adjourn. Okay, he's happy to move it. Councillor